Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back on the second dev server for Red Skies, and it's time to have a look at the UK frigate, the Leopard, which is coming into the game. This is going to be at the higher echelon of the coastal fleet tree after the Brave class that you can see here, and that basically means that this is going to be a very expensive vehicle, which is very similar to one that you can get at the lower echelons of the Blue Water fleet, unfortunately. It's still looking pretty fun though. It does have access to some very nice main caliber guns for 4.0, but overall I feel like this is going to be one of those vehicles that a lot of people don't get, just like the Whitby, because of the fact that you have this area which is quite hard to get. The Leopard is actually very similar to the Whitby when it comes to overall use. It basically has the same main guns, or well, very similar main guns at the same size but slightly different type, and then also it gets access to the dual mounted 40mm as well. So the main armament on the Leopard is two dual mounted sets of 4.5-inch guns. You can find them in two gun areas, so the front and also the back of the machine. Being able to hit vehicles with these should be quite easy to do. You just have to angle it about this or maybe about that, or just broadside if you feel like it. It also has access to the dual mounted 40, which is on the top right here. Has also a tracking radar director, which is pretty cool, and also the tracking radar directors here as well, plus the bridge in the front. You can see that it has massive engines in the bottom, which give this thing a pretty nice max speed in arcade of 62 kilometers an hour, and also two sets of smoke funnels, which are actually incredibly small compared to what we've seen in the past. It has a crew complement of 205, which is very large for a machine of this size, so hopefully that will give it a little bit extra of the survivability. When it comes to armor though, the only extra armor you get is the anti-fragmentation on the turrets themselves. It's only 12.7mm, so it's not really going to be able to stop anything, but at the same time it's nice to have a little bit of extra. The main armor, or the fire tower armor, is 13, which I'm pretty sure is what it's talking about here, and then the hull itself is 16mm, with the superstructure only being 4. So the armor is pretty much non-existent on this thing. The survivability comes from the crew and also the size of it, because you have to shoot all areas, or the majority of areas, to take out all of the crew. The modifications that this thing gets access to is obviously centered around the guns and also some of its secondary uses. So the 4.5 inches or the 114mm get access to HE, SAP, HETF, and also a HEVT shell. So overall, you know, quite a lot of different uses here for taking out either aircraft or small machines, and plus SAP, if you ever get unfortunate enough to get fully up-tiered into some light/heavy cruisers at 5.0, or even 4.7, you'll be able to do a decent amount of damage to them with this round. Also, the AP has at least a rank 1 modification, so it won't be too long before you get this. Remember though, because this is such a high research cost vehicle and also an end-of-the-line vehicle, these modifications are going to be through the roof for this machine, which is an issue because of the naval tech tree split. Because of the naval tech tree split, vehicles like this kind of get boned. I don't know how else to put it, because of the fact that they're right at the end of these echelons, but they also have the same firepower as stuff which is basically rank 1 of the tech tree for Britain. Like the Hunt class with its 3 dual-mounted 4-inch guns actually has more firepower than the Leopard, but it's also very cheap and very easy to modify, where the Leopard is very hard to research and also very hard to modify too. It's one of the major reasons why when people call for this stuff to happen in ground forces or aviation, I highly disagree with it, because of the fact that you'll get stuff such as the heavy tank, the American T-34, costing 380,000 RP, and nobody's going to research it who is new to the game, because it is literally really hard to do, and will mean that certain vehicles will just drop off out of existence. The Leopard that we have here could easily be one of them, which is a shame. But it also gets access to the improved rangefinder, the bunch of different shells, and also some belts for the 40mm as well, meaning that it will have a multi-purpose use. I think this is quite nice. No access to artillery, but that's not a huge thing, and obviously the turret movement as well. So being 114mm or 4.5 inches means that you can one-shot or hull break a lot of PT boats and battle boats if you get to face them, which would be really nice. But I think the majority of stuff this thing's going to fight are destroyers of the lower BRs, like 3.7 to 4.3. So you might not see a lot of coastal stuff, but once you do, you'll be able to manhandle them with the 4.5 inches, which is really, really nice. The other thing about this machine is obviously speed of it. It doesn't have access to any secondary armaments in the form of like torpedoes or anything like that, but you can see it does actually get access to a radar, which is really cool. So that at least is a little bit of a plus to it. It's something that shouldn't be disregarded. Generally radars are pretty useful, at least from when I've personally used them. It just means that you get a little bit extra to your vehicle itself. And as somebody who's used a lot of the 4.5-inch platforms for the British, one thing to note is the 4.5s have an incredibly good fire rate. So you're able to put out a lot of damage very quickly to a lot of vehicles that are coming in. And this is obviously pretty important because it means that you can just really barrel out a ton of damage to the machines, and it's just easier to just keep firing and keep firing and keep firing with the 4.5s. It kind of reminds me of like the PR-35s, where the PR-35 and the PR-159 and other machines like that for the Soviets, they have an incredibly good fire rate, and they're able to put out a ton of damage from like 1 to 5 kilometers, and that's generally a hunting ground. But the slight difference between a vehicle like that and a vehicle like this is a vehicle like this actually has access to AP. So you can do damage against higher machines, whereas something like a PR-159 unfortunately can't. So it gives you that extra usability with the slightly decreased fire rate. It also means you still have the same issues that you find a lot of these machines have. You can see the radar there showing where the vehicle was. But the issue you have is if one of your turrets gets taken out, now you only have half the firepower that you used to have. And also, if both turrets get taken out, you don't really have a secondary armament that you can really make do anything. So you're very limited on usability based on if you can keep these two sets of turrets firing and if you can keep them just smashing the enemy over and over again. The damage output of the 4.5s is very good for the British. It works incredibly well. You're able to hit, destroyers at a good click and just keep smashing them over and over again, and you will take out a lot of machines with a machine like this. But at the same time, because you don't have a lot of survivability, and you definitely have a lot less than destroyers, what will end up happening is they'll be able to do way more damage to you than you're able to do to them. And it just leaves you in the scenario where pretty much you are going to be at their whim if you are going to die or not. But against smaller machines in the coastal tree, you'll be able to dominate them very much so with these 114s, because if you miss a shell, it's not a huge deal, because you reload so quickly, you'll be able to fire one off in no time at all. But if you end up in a scenario where you're fighting, let's say, a 1936 or, any of the British naval destroyers, or the majority of them, or the American ones, you're just going to get outgunned and outbeat. And as a selling point for a vehicle, if I tell you, okay, so you can grind through this whole tech tree to get a vehicle that is equal or worse than a tech tree that takes about 8,000 RP to get to the vehicle I'm talking about, which one are you going to pick? The vast majority of people are going to obviously pick the second option, and that means that stuff like this is just going to go by the wayside, which is incredibly sad, because it's going to be a fun machine to play. It's going to get hurt a bit by the matchmaker, but overall it should be great. but you're just not going to see a lot of them. Just like you don't see a lot of peacocks, just like you don't see a lot of other machines of the higher echelons of the coastal ships. Hopefully at some point they have a look at the RP requirements for them, or they rejig the system so these things have a little bit of help for them, so we can see more of them in play. Otherwise, this BR will just be destroyer dominated like it is right now. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank BRFC, Swollen Ostrich, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Conte Baraka, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Lafouche, Barine, and Samuel Schlick for supporting the channel.